Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Erik Hernandez here along with,
Doug.
and we're diving right into horror for the month of October. Doug has mentioned that he's going to be doing the 31 days and 31 movies for October, or for Halloween, whichever you want to refer to it as. And he was nice enough to give us a rundown of the different films. You want to do the list again real quick?
Yeah, sure. So far, we've got Night of the Demons, Messiah of Evil, Hell House LLC Part 3, Hell House LLC Part 2. Yes, I know I'm going backwards, but that's because the prequel's coming out. Um, that was and Psycho Gorman.
There you go. So if anybody else is joining him, I tried to do it this year, but I don't have the time. I've got kids. I don't have the time or space to do 31 movies in 31 nights. But if anybody else out there is trying to do this for the month of October and you want to share your lists, feel free. You can send them over to rabblecast@gmail.com or hit us up on social media. And with that being said, we are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the podcast section. Check out the show over at youtube.com/Rabblecast. Also over at rabblecast.libsyn.com. Check out the Rabblecast Facebook fan page. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast, because it's formerly known as Twitter, now X. And like I said before, rabblecast@gmail.com. If you want to share your lists, if you want to share any stories, feedback, comments, whatever the case is, always love to hear it, see what's going on, especially for this month. Doug and I always get a kick out of October and Halloween in general. I've learned to appreciate horror movies now as an adult, as opposed to being terrified of them as a kid, whereas Doug's always been into them. So,
Well, they scared the hell out of me, but they were also very much intoxicating as well.
yeah, there you go. Anything else?
No, I'm good, man.
You want to give us a sneak peek for movie number 6?
I can't give you a sneak peek for that which I have not figured out yet.
Fair enough. All right. With that being said, let's get into it. Enjoy the show. All right, fair warning. The window is going to be open, so you might hear some stuff in the background.
That's quite all right. It's hot.
Well, thankfully it's cooling down again. Like we had a few days over here as far as it getting warm again, but things are settling down again. Hopefully.
Hopefully. So, what's on the agenda?
I don't know, to be honest.
Shit, I don't know either.
Well, no, we're getting into the spooky season. We've mentioned that a few times already in the past few shows. Where this is the first episode of October. So I was curious. You mentioned last time that you were a part of a group where you're watching a Halloween movie for every day.
That is correct.
Okay, now I know you've talked about these in the past. I know you've mentioned some stuff in the past. Would you be willing to share, 5 movies so far that you've either watched or have on tap?
Yeah. Here's what we got so far. So today is October 5th, so we're 5 days in. So far, I have watched number 1, Night of the Demons. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay, it came out back in the 80s. It's a fun haunted house Halloween movie. A bunch of high schoolers go to party at an abandoned funeral home, and it turns out it's inhabited by some type of demonic force. Yeah, it's like some good 80s, just silly fun. It's a good time.
What
Fun
was it
shit.
called again?
Night of the Demons. They did a remake a couple of years back. I haven't watched that yet, and I don't really have a desire to.
Okay.
All right, that was number 1. Number 2 is Messiah of Evil. Have you ever heard of it?
No. These are all new to me so far.
Okay, Messiah of Evil came out back in the 1970s. Basically, it's a story about this woman. She goes to find her husband, who is an artist who's living in this small, sleepy seaside town somewhere. I think it's implied to be California or somewhere on the Pacific, but they don't quite clarify perfectly. Um, so when they're out there running around, fucking around, she's trying to figure out what's going on, and she just keeps on finding weirder and weirder stuff going on. So like everybody in town's acting really weird, everything's fucked up. Also, you find out that everyone in the movie is an unreliable narrator. So yeah, it's just, you can't trust anything anyone says.
Okay.
So eventually you find out that there's some type of infection spreading amongst the people there, and yeah, everything's just getting progressively more and more fucked up. And then it turns out finally at the end, it's kind of like a play on vampirism, but it's also cannibalism. I
Okay.
won't give away the big twist of it in case anybody watches it. Although it came out in 1973, it's a 50-year-old movie. What the fuck are you waiting for? Let's see. 3 and 4 are occupied by Hell House LLC Part 2 and Hell House LLC Part 3. Um, so I can't remember if I ever talked about the Hell House trilogy on here before. Maybe about 4 years ago, right before I left New Jersey. The Hell House trilogy are a series of found footage horror movies. The first one basically deals with a group of friends who run a haunted house every year in New York. They decide to leave the area and go up to this abandoned hotel in upstate New York called the Abaddon Hotel, which is your first clue something's not right there because Abaddon is the name of a demon that guards one of the gateways to hell. So eventually you find out some shit just ain't right in the hotel and things start going sideways from there. And the second and third ones basically build off of this. I'm doing a rewatch of these because number one, they were actually filmed not too far from where I am in Pennsylvania, in the town of Lehighton, at a place called Waldorf's Estate of Fear,
Okay.
which is a functioning haunted house. And I'm also doing a rewatch on them because at the end of the month, on the 30th, on Shudder, they're putting out a prequel to them.
Okay.
Because the third one ends pretty definitively. I won't give away anything, but in case anybody's looking for some stuff to watch. The first Hell House LLC is very good for a found footage movie. It's probably the best one of the last that I've seen in probably the last 10 years, which says a lot because that genre is just infinitely frustrating to me for most of the fucking movies. The second and third ones have their good, strong parts, but we're diminishing returns on them. And then tonight, after we wrap up, I am going to watch Psycho Goreman.
Okay, that one I definitely have not heard of.
It's a Shudder exclusive. It's basically about this alien being who's ultra powerful, who gets imprisoned on the planet Earth, and 2 kids accidentally awaken him, but one of them has basically a gem that basically puts him under their control, and that's pretty much as I know from there. And he's basically hyper powerful, like telekinetic and super strength and stuff like that. So, and he's also just destroys planets. So he's just a son of a bitch.
Okay. Shit.
Yeah.
And that's all in 5 days so far. Well, counting tonight that you're going to be watching. So it's 4 plus 1.
Yeah, 4+1. So yeah, I'm trying to stay caught up as best I can because I'm trying to make it through. Last year I was not able to finish, unfortunately.
Now, here's my question. What do you do if you fall behind? Do you just like have like a weekend of horror movies?
Yeah, you just double up here and there.
Wow. Okay.
And if you don't hit 31, then you just don't hit 31. I mean, it's supposed to be fun. I usually treat it as a mixture of let me revisit some stuff I really like, and also let me get some new stuff in there too, because there's so much. I mean, I go through Shudder and like, yeah, my on Shudder, like on every streaming service, you can do that thing where you'd be like, add it to my list, so you got your stuff marked down of the stuff you want to watch. I've got so much stuff on there, I cannot keep up with it. Yeah, I mean, it's wild. I mean, like, we are not. I mean, some of the stuff is kind of drag, but it's also going through it. Like, Messiah of Evil is a perfect example. I saw that pop up on streaming service, and I was like, oh, what's this?
Hold on
73.
1 second. Let's
Sure.
take a quick break. My headphones for some reason are cutting out on me. Give me
Okay.
1 second here. Yeah, Night of the Messiah. What year was it?
It came out Messiah of Evil.
Messiah of Evil. Thank you.
No problem. Messiah of Evil. It came out in I want to say either 73 or 74. I had never even heard of it. Just one day I was scrolling through Shudder looking around what they had on there, and I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. And a lot of 70s horror, it's very slow paced, but it's very atmospheric and very good at building aesthetic and building the world you're in. So it's one of those movies. It's like, oh, let me just put on and see if I could just drift off into this and just really get into it. And I really liked it. I mean, not gonna lie, it took me a couple of watches because it's so. It's not. It's very muted, if you know what I mean. Like it's not in your face.
Okay.
It's the opposite of a Fast and Furious movie, if that makes any sense. So I'm not going to lie, the first couple of times I watched it, I'd get like 20, 30 minutes through, fall asleep, get 20, 30 minutes in, fall asleep. So finally I was like, okay, I'm just going to get some caffeine and just sit here and watch it. And I was like, oh, this is fucking excellent. So, yeah.
All right. One more trick. Let me just switch over my output jack. One sec. I apologize if this part makes it into the full show. I'll decide that later on, but we'll see what happens from there. You were saying opposite of Fast and Furious is a very muted movie?
Yeah, it's very muted. So the pacing takes its time. It really like builds up the story and lets the tension build and all that good stuff. It also just feels like it's like more of a quiet film, if that makes any sense either. But yeah, it's a good time. It's worth checking out. It's floating around on Prime, and I believe it's also out there it's on Shudder, and I believe it's on Prime as well right now.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there's any movies that I've even like come close to watching this year. I had an inkling of trying to do this myself, actually, but then I realized that I have two children, other hobbies, and I don't know if I have the time. More or less, the library or availability of watching 31 movies in 31 days, and I was just like, wow, this is quite an undertaking. So for anybody who's doing this, it's quite interesting. Although, like I said, by talking to you and talking to some of our other mutual friends, I found a new love for the horror movie genre, and that is, it is what it is in terms of the older movies, as far as the schlock, the gore, the gratuitous nudity, the bad writing, but they've slowly evolved and they've slowly gotten my attention more and more over the years, to now where I'm a little bit more intrigued by them. The other day I was trying to watch, oh gosh, what was it? It was Ethan Hawke. It was part of a series, not Insidious, Sinister.
Oh yeah, with Bagul. Yeah.
And I started watching it. It left one platform, ended up on another platform, so I have to track down where it went. But I got partway through where he's the author and he's investigating this one murder, and he's like pretty much upped and moved his family to this different location, and he's apparently done this in the past without saying anything, and it's caused all kinds of turmoil in his family. And I'm just like, oh wow, this sounds really interesting. But then they do he sees the first glimpse of whatever the monster or whatever the spirit is in the pool as he's reviewing old footage. And I was like, okay, this seems really cool. Like I want to learn more of that, and knowing that the movies themselves have continued and it's become a franchise, which, let's face it, just about every horror movie is becoming a franchise in itself. Between that and maybe you might know this and you can help me out. Insidious, is that part of Sinister or is that a separate franchise?
Separate universe.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, same director, separate franchise.
Okay, I gotta try to hash out which ones I want to watch, because I know. So, like I said, Sinister, Insidious was one of the ones that I'm interested in watching, and then there's what is it? The Conjuring, pretty much has its own universe.
Yeah, The Conjuring's a whole nother. Yeah, there's a whole nother bag of wax in that one.
Well, it's The
I'm trying to
Conjuring,
remember.
Annabelle,
Go ahead.
The Nun. Are those spin-offs or not?
I'm trying to remember here. I saw one of the Conjurings a couple of years back. I didn't watch Annabelle. I didn't see Insidious. That's all stuff I've been meaning to watch. They're just kind of lower on my list, to be perfectly honest with you.
No,
There's a lot of shit on my list. Yeah.
Those are more of the mainstream releases, so they've obviously caught my attention because when I go through all the different movie lists, I'll find them. I'm not like the ones that you rattled off before, Night of the Demons, Messiah of Evil, and all those. I Night of the Demons maybe sounds familiar. I want to say because I'm looking here at the poster for it on IMDb, and it almost reminds me of the one character from Army of Darkness.
Oh, yeah, the chick who's got a thing for Ash who gets possessed by demons.
Yeah, the makeup looks very similar, and that's not disparaging in any way whatsoever. It's just that's where my brain immediately went to. But one of the things I always remembered, especially like if you talk about going to Blockbuster Video or even older than that, Palmer Video back in the day, is as a child I would always try to avoid the horror movie section because I knew I was terrified of it.
Huh.
But the covers always intrigued me, whether it was the demons, the sinister looking posters, or just the photography and the makeup. Always looked interesting. So there was always things that I wanted to see. Like I remember, and it's burned into my head, the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, where they're doing the homage to, or the parody of, depending on how you look at it, to The Breakfast Club.
Yes.
And what was it? Ghoulies, I remember the cover of. Nightbreed, I always found an interesting cover.
Oh, fuck yeah, Nightbreed.
I have not seen these movies yet. And there's a bunch of other ones here and there that if I see them, I can say, oh yeah, I remember seeing that one as I walk through the aisle or as I walk past that section. Obviously, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, those are like very, very popular, very mainstream, so it's very easy to come across those. But some of the other ones, you would see them and you're just like, oh wow, like what is that? And then you look on the back and like, what the fuck am I looking at? What was the one that terrified me the most? I want to say it was iZombie or something like that.
What can you describe the cover to me?
The cover just looks like a skull, and it's like just been eaten away by like whatever, like flesh-eating maggots or creatures, whatever the case. It just, I don't remember if it was the front cover or the back of it, but it just, the description of it. I remember this one in particular. Wasn't even Palmer or wasn't even Blockbuster. This was a Hollywood Video. I remember checking out the horror section and seeing this. It probably wasn't iZombie. Well, I'm gonna look it up. I have the ability.
Do you remember what the tagline was?
No, that one I don't remember. That one definitely escapes me.
Okay, we're doing terrible podcasting here, but I'm about to send you something and tell me if this is it.
Oh boy. See if it comes through.
Okay, yeah, let me know when that lands in your text.
Let's see. Check it now. Come through. Yeah, that's it.
Ah, okay. That is Lucio Fulci's Zombie.
God, it's as terrifying as I remembered.
That is a pretty famous movie, actually, in the horror, especially in the Italian horror subgenre.
Okay, so I've heard the name Fulci before. What other films has he done in the genre?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Is that a loaded gun right there?
Let's put it this way. I have a coffee table book of Lucio Fulci's films. Lucio Fulci, he worked pretty steadily as a director from, good Lord, I want to say in like the 50s or 60s up until his death in 1996. In the horror genre, okay. I can give you his big stuff would probably be, of course, Zombie. A fun story on Zombie. So when that came out in Italy, it was called Zombie 2. Zombi and the number 2.
Okay.
And the reason that it was called that is when George Romero's Dawn of the Dead was released in Italy, they called it Zombie. So he totally tried to cash in on the popularity of George Romero by just calling it that, hoping that people would be like, oh, that must be a sequel, and just go fucking see it, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with Dawn of the Dead whatsoever. I'd say his other favorite stuff was he did a movie called The Beyond, which is about a hotel outside of New Orleans that's built on top of one of the 7 gateways to hell. Of course, on top of that, you've got House by the Cemetery, which is about a house by a cemetery. And there's a lot of blood and gore and crazy shit going on in it. There's City of the Living Dead, where a priest commits suicide in the town of Dunwich, and doing so opens up a gateway to hell that promises to destroy the world if it's not closed by All Saints Day. You're probably noticing a recurring theme with his movies.
I am. I see one here that says Murder Rock, Dancing Death.
Murder Rock, Dancing Death.
Yeah.
Apparently
he was the writer for it.
Oh, okay. Here's the thing. He worked on so many freaking movies, and he's got so many stuff. I don't know too much about his writing credits. I mainly know more of his directing credits. I'm looking actually. Murder Rock, Dancing Death. Oh, I see it. Murder Rock, Dancing Death. Oh, that was like one of the later ones in the 80s. He did. It's weird too because he did everything from horror to weird sci-fi to some action stuff. He just did the weirdest amount of stuff. I mean, he was best known for his horror stuff. In addition to the stuff I meant, like I can rattle off a couple of other ones. Another notorious one is the New York Ripper, which
yep, that one pops up here as well.
New York Ripper, that is one of those movies you watch, and when you're done, you feel like you need to take a shower because it is scummy. It is one of the most misogynistic films I have ever seen in my fucking life.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about this killer running around New York City murdering women, and very often he makes this like quacking noise when he's doing it, kind of to intimidate them, and occasionally he'll call the police and stay on the phone with them doing this weird like duck voice and quacking while he's torturing a woman to death.
Okay.
And it's also shot in New York in the 1970s when the city was just a fucking mess. And it felt like there was like a seedy strip club or porno shop like on every other fucking block, and the city was just a shithole.
Is this the one where
Go ahead. What's up?
Oh gosh, what's his name? I'm completely blanking on his name. Give me 1 second here.
Give me a hint. I might be able to remember.
I was trying to remember the guy's name, but Savini, Tom Savini. Is this the movie where he's in the car and he gets blasted by the shotgun?
Oh my god, I'm so glad you mentioned that. So no, that was the movie called Maniac.
Okay. I'm conflating the two.
Very, very much in the same spirit as the New York Ripper. Except that one was about Joe Spinell. He's playing a basically completely deranged man who's running around New York, murdering women and taking body parts and attaching them to mannequins. It's funny because I can't remember the name of them, but there's a comic book company out there that basically did a comic series called Maniac versus New York Ripper, and it's about the duck voiced killer versus the killer from Maniac. I've never read it because I haven't gotten around to ordering it. I'm kind of curious to see what's in it, but I'm sure it's just sleazy as fuck.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. A friend of mine ordered it. Yeah, he said he was going to lend it to me, but I haven't gotten a chance to catch up with him since then for him to give it to me.
Okay.
But yeah, Lucio Fulci, he was he was like a fucking he's one of the godfathers of Italian horror, along with your Dario Argentos and Mario Bava and Umberto Venzi, and I'll even throw Ruggero Deodato in that circumstance as well. But I mean, a lot of his stuff is incredibly fucking gory and violent and fucked up. But he's also done like some weird like artsy stuff too, like Don't Torture a Duckling is basically a criticism. It's about murder in a small village in Italy, but it's also a criticism of some of the policies of the Catholic Church, which kind of effectively got him. He actually left Italy for I think about a decade or so while the heat died down on him because some of the government officials were not very happy with him.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and he also died under very mysterious circumstances. Back in 1996. He was experiencing a bit of a career resurgence. He thought nobody gave a fuck about him. But he actually, in January of that year, he made an appearance at a horror convention in New York City in the midst of a giant blizzard. And still tons of people basically forged their way through the blizzard because the guy never made public appearances. And like when they brought him out on stage for like a Q&A, like he got like a standing ovation. You could see like there's video floating around of it. And you could see on his face, like, he's equal parts like touched and also just amazed because he was like, these nobody gives a fuck about my movies, and but to like hardcore horror fans, like they love his stuff, myself included. But then a few months later, Fulci was a lifelong diabetic, and I find it very strange that one day he went to bed with just forgetting to take his insulin.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if it really legitimately was an accident or, reasons unknown he committed suicide. Like nobody really knows.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah, so kind of a bit of a mystery even in like the guy's passing.
Huh.
But yeah, it's anybody out there like check it out. I feel like I'm constantly clicking shutter on this show anymore, but there's an Italian documentary they added on there. I haven't watched it yet because I haven't had the patience to sit through a documentary in a bit. But there's a documentary about his life where they actually even speak to members of his family because yeah, his daughters, I think they're both in their 40s and or 50s now at this point. So they even asked him like, what was like, and they just basically talk, spend part of it like, talking about their father and, and his reputation and his history and stuff like that. So a friend of mine watched it and he said it was very good. So that is definitely on my list of shit to watch.
Okay. I don't think I've ever watched a single Fulci movie, but like I said, I've that cover was burned into my brain when I saw it. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck is that? For anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, please look up the cover. It's the 1979 movie Zombie. I don't know why I threw an I in the beginning of it. And, I blame Apple.
No,
But
because there is a show out there called iZombie, so I'm thinking you might be conflating it with that.
well, I know, as I said, I Zombie. I knew that it wasn't the DC Comics version, but
Hmm.
for some reason, I Zombie just was the first thing my brain went to. But I know the image, and as soon as you send it to me, and I guess that was like a anniversary edition that that cover.
Yeah.
So I remember the old one. It was just stark black with the zombified figure on the cover. And when I saw that the first time, I was like, okay. But I was brave enough to turn it around and read the back cover of it briefly, and I was just like, all right, I'm putting this back. This is me probably in my mid-teens, and it was one of those things like if I watched a horror movie or if I caught a glimpse of one, or as far as like a few minutes, whether it was on HBO or even just like late night TV, I would be terrified to go to the basement to do laundry because I was like, fuck, something's down there. So for the longest time, horror movies held a lot of sway on me, and that was always because again, I have two older brothers. They would always watch movies with friends or just watch movies late night, and all those Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, and a bunch of other stuff out there like Phantasm. I saw Phantasm way too fucking young, and some of that shit, just like certain scenes, got stuck in my head, and they would not leave for the longest time. But I like to think that I've overcome some of the I wouldn't say fear at this point because I've kind of I've come to learn that they're just movies. Like especially when you watch the behind the scenes stuff and you see them set up. I saw a lot of behind the scene things for Nightmare on Elm Street when they do some of the effects and some of the latex and the tearing. How they did the famous bedroom scene with Johnny Depp and the blood that shoots out. I'll mention it again. The movies that made us. They did a couple of the horror movie genre. I knew some of the behind the scenes stuff, but it was just fun to see a new, fresh take on it as far as how the history of the movie was, came about and how they went about filming and budgeting and everything else. So it's like, oh, okay, this is just like anything else. It's a movie. Somebody writes it, somebody imagines it, and somebody has to, bring it to life, especially on set. And from there, I was like, okay, now I can appreciate it for the art that it is, as opposed to just the the scary movie that's late night. But it is that, don't get me wrong, and it's still it dug its claws into me early on, but I was thankfully to see that I was able to adjust, I guess you could say, and just like I said, just come to appreciate it more and more. What was the other movies that like terrified me? There was one. Some of the Puppet Master movies really screwed me up early
Yes.
on.
Okay.
There was another one called Dollhouse. This one I remember, and again, as you said, terrible podcasting because here I'm just like going on brief snippets from my mind. Um, the dolls in the one house, I guess there's like a curse on them, and the longer you stayed in the house itself, you become a doll.
This sounds familiar. Go on.
There was so like the punk rock character or the the heavy metal character gets taken over by the dolls, and when their friends find them, their face is becoming porcelain like, and when they go to remove the porcelain mask, it's actually their skin that has become porcelain. So when they remove the mask, they essentially remove the skin of their face.
Okay.
Am I making this up? Am I writing my own horror
No,
movie right now?
no, this all sounds familiar. So that's why I'm like, huh, I can almost picture the cover art in my head. So that's why I'm like, okay, let me think.
If I remember correctly,
Uh,
at one point during the movie, they come across a hallway and there's a bunch of like little toy soldier puppets or dolls. And when they raise their guns up, they laugh at what's about to happen. When they fire, they actually fire actual projectiles. And the one guy, or I can't remember if it was a guy or girl, but the one person who gets hit actually like gets injured to the point where they really can't run away. So when they load up for the second volley and just like holy shit, so they're gonna take them down with toy guns.
okay, and you said this came out when you were a kid?
Yeah,
Maybe just dolls?
it could be. I say Dollhouse because I remember again from growing up, it was just a weird part. Let's see.
A group of motorists, including young Judy Bower, her horrible father, her evil queen of a stepmother, and a meek businessman named Ralph, become stranded at a spooky mansion during a nighttime thunderstorm. The house's strange owners offer overnight lodgings, but with the dastardly intentions of making their visitors the playthings of their murderous toy dolls. And that was in 1987.
That could be it.
And the cover, it looks like a doll. Half of her mouth is a skull, or you can see teeth, kind of looking like half a skull face, and she's holding the eyes.
What
Ooh,
do I
this looks interesting.
what do I remember? Like there was like a character like with like a leather jacket, and jeans, like your prerequisite bad boy kind of character.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, like they didn't believe the curse or the warning either, so they got there it is. I'm actually the trailer just popped up. Oh, was it a girl? I'm gonna have to investigate this a little bit further.
Oh, I'm trying to noodle my way through this.
Yep, this is it because I just saw the scene with the toy soldiers as the one little toy
Oh,
soldier drops the sword and they all fire on the people in the hallway. Yep, I'm fucking having flashbacks right now.
so it is dolls.
It is dolls. 19. What did we say? 80, 86.
86, 87. Oh, this was directed by Stuart Gordon. No shit. Interesting. I didn't know he did this. Awesome.
Yeah,
For
this was
those who
another
were,
one.
go ahead.
This was another one of us going to. I believe we went to my cousins, who were the same size as my brothers. Or same size, same. I'm sorry, I'm looking at dolls and thinking size. They were the same age as my brothers. They were all in high school at the time, and they would watch the movies late night, and it was just like weird shit. When I walked in to the room, I saw this crazy scene playing out with the toy dolls, and then I came back where the one girl who's all like big hair, leather jacket. She's the one who gets taken. When I came back for her death scene, I'm just like, what the fuck were you guys watching? And I just kept leaving the room over and over again. I could not get comfortable that night. It was so fucking weird.
Huh.
So I was, yep, there it is. Jesus Christ, it fucking creeps me out still. I was about 5 or 6 when I saw this movie because I think they'd rented it and brought it home. So I was probably closer to 6 at that point. And oh boy. Have not seen it since, but holy shit.
And do you know who Stuart Gordon is?
Uh, it's gonna take me too long to figure it out. Please educate
Okay.
me.
Okay, so Stuart Gordon, he was a director. He's most famous probably for, in the horror genre, he did Re-Animator with Jeffrey Combs, which is one of
Gotcha.
those movies that's like widely loved and revered. And also, he directed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Weird, really?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
And yeah, and also Robot Jocks, if you remember that one.
Yeah, I do remember what Jocks.
Yeah, he had a very interesting career, like bouncing between like doing some studio pictures, some mainstream stuff, a lot of like weird experimental stuff. He did a bunch of movies like Re-Animator, From Beyond, Dagon, Dreams in the Witch House. He did a lot of adaptations of H.P. Lovecraft works. Yeah, loved his stuff, and he also worked a lot with Jeffrey Combs, like I said. And yeah, sadly, he passed away about 3.5 years ago. It was right on the outset of COVID in March of 2020. He passed away. So, but yeah, excellent director. Like I would recommend everybody to yeah go out there and check him out. Go look up. Start with Reanimator. If you like that one, I dig deeper into his film catalog and go check out like From Beyond. Go check out Castle Freak. Maybe not check out Dagon. That was not one of the stronger efforts. The CGI in that one is real rough, even for 2001 standards.
Okay. Um, this comes on the heels of I remember reading an article earlier in the week. Um, if you remember a while back, was it like a year or two ago now? Scott Derrickson was supposed to be the director for Doctor Strange 2, The Multiverse of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
And leading up to the release of that film, everybody kept talking about, oh, it's going to be the MCU's first horror movie, which
Yes.
sounded awesome. Like you're like, oh, this could be like what we've been waiting for. Um, just a diverse film genre as far as the MCU itself, because we've already had, let's face it, you've had your superhero movies, you've had your origin stories, but then Captain America and the Winter Soldier gave you that spy thriller, which nobody was expecting. Um, Ended up being a really, really good movie, very memorable. And when people kept saying that, oh, now they're going to try to diversify and make different genre films within the MCU using the different characters, and Doctor Strange was going to be that film at one point. I don't remember hearing any other films in particular that going that route, but as the movie got closer and closer, then you heard a little rumblings that, oh, Derrickson wasn't happy with the creative direction. He had some disputes with MCU head Kevin Feige, and just essentially everything devolved, and he stepped away from the project, but stayed on as a producer. Earlier this week, there was an article that came out that said, he was happy that he walked away from it because ultimately what was being concocted was a monstrosity, and he didn't want to have his name on it.
When you say monstrosity, like a mess, or he doesn't like horror?
No, it became a mess. Like just the conflicting ideas, the things that were trying to be done, the compromises that were being made. They had, like any MCU movie, they had a roadmap of where they wanted it to go and what scenes had to include other mentions to other characters or other movies if they wanted to do references. And because of that, he felt, I guess, a little constrained. So
Okay.
rather than be stuck in this formulaic movie that was supposed to be, again, a quote unquote horror movie, he decided to step back, become an executive producer, and move on to other projects. And as I'm seeing right here, if I'm reading this correctly, because IMDb likes to just throw everything at you all at once,
Mm-hmm.
um, apparently he helped produce The Black Phone, a movie that I talked about a few episodes ago with, again, Ethan
Oh,
Hawke. And
yes.
there is a Black Phone 2 being produced as well.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that's going to work out, but that seems really interesting. But, oh, look at that shit. He also executive producer on Sinister. I'm
May I
learning
guess
stuff
around.
tonight.
It's so interesting, because a lot of people have looked at it this way. Horror is kind of a handy boot camp for not just directors but also for actors,
Absolutely,
because
yes.
you don't a lot most times. I mean, they have done it before, but a lot of times horror movies don't get sold on who's in it. It gets sold on the concept because, horror is one of those things where everybody likes it. And if you have a good enough concept, if you have a good enough idea and some decent effects or some good direction or whatever, people are going to be attracted to that. They're less interested in, oh, the star like is in it. We'll go out and just go check it out. So it's a good place for no name, or I don't want to say no namers, but newer actors to get their start there and kind of start cutting their teeth into it. Very often these movies are shot on budget, so you learn to work in constraints. You also have to work with the constant push and pull of, well, we want to do this big sequence, but we don't have anywhere near enough money for it, so what are we going to pare down so we can keep this movie under budget and moving along? And also, it's one of those things where horror notoriously is, when the MPAA hands out their ratings, they are merciless with fucking horror. And they have been for years. So if you can cut your teeth in horror and basically make it through, it's a good jumping off point. I mean, what's his face? He's going to be running the DC universe now. Guardians of the Galaxy guy. I'm blanking on his name. Help me out.
James Gunn.
Thank you. James Gunn started out doing like trashy horror and ridiculous shit with Troma films.
Troma?
Yeah, same thing with what's his face, Snyder, the guy who directed Justice League.
Zack Snyder.
I always want to say Todd Snyder, and I was like, that's not right. I'm an idiot. But yeah, in fact, actually, that's where the two of them got to be buds. They came up together, working for $0 for Lloyd Kaufman. And speaking of boot camps of, if you really want to get into filmmaking and you're willing to suffer for your art and possibly down the road parlay it into a big money career, go work for Troma for $0. But I mean, it's famously, you look at Brad Pitt got his start in, he was in Cutting Class back in the late 1980s, or of course, famously Kevin Bacon was in, the first Friday the 13th back in 1979.
Yep.
So it's horror is just one of those weird things where it's always kind of occupied a weird gray area of cinema, in my opinion.
Well, look at Jamie Lee Curtis in the first Halloween movie. Another example, like at the time, she wasn't necessarily a known name, but she had some family in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So when they took her on, they're like, all right, let's put her to work and see what we can do. And she was willing to work out, do whatever was needed to be on set, like you're saying, working within tight constraints. And from there, I mean, she's just become more and more known working in the business. So you can always see people starting out in horror. Jennifer Aniston at one point was in Leprechaun.
Yes.
Like those little things I've caught, and those are as far as the movie history buff in me, I always appreciate those because you see these people in all these other horror movies that you wouldn't associate them with that nowadays, especially with the exception of Jamie Lee Curtis. She's really embraced going back to the Halloween franchise.
And she's done a bunch of horror movies over the years as well. I mean, everybody also forgets, she was in Prom Night and she was in Terror Train and there's another one or two that she was in that I'm blanking on right now. But she kind of, in fact, actually at one point, I think she was trying to get away from it because she was scared to death of being typecasted, and she came damn close.
Well, yeah, that's also just the business of itself. If you get into those movies, like, and this is going back to the superhero genre, but Christopher Reeves was, getting frustrated, but even though he was Superman for the longest time, he didn't want to be known as just Superman. He wanted to be known as an actor or a writer, whatever the case was. So much so that when they did Quest for Peace, part of his deal was that if he did that, then the studio would fund his film project.
It's interestingly enough, I was just reading up on him a couple of weeks back, and you are exactly correct. He turned down piles of scripts because he was like, he wanted to go do Streetcar Named Desire or very serious cinema because. I mean, he went to Juilliard. He was a very accomplished actor. I definitely got to give the guy that. And also a bit of a cock, too, from what I've read.
Well, we know that now in passing.
Yeah. I mean, he did a lot of great stuff in his life. I mean, even after the accident, he did so much stuff in terms of trying to, bring attention to, how stem cell research can help people who have those debilitating accidents recover some use of their limbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, famously during Superman 2, I mean, O'Halloran, the giant dude who was like one of Zod's henchmen, yeah, he came about a hair's breadth away from beating the shit out of Christopher Reeve because he was being a dick.
That's always a good one. That was the episode of How Did This Get Made, where they cover Superman 2.
Yes. Oh no, no, they do Superman 3, um, which I also rewatched about a month ago and is just as insane as you remember it. That was, of course, oh man, what's going to happen when Superman and Richard Pryor, mix it up? We can look the fuck out, everyone. But they just happen to have like Jack O'Halloran on the end to talk about Superman 2, because yeah, Superman 3 is butt fuckingly insane.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. But no, you're right in the respect of for a lot of actors, directors, writers, whatever you want to refer, um, horror seems to be like a stepping stone for a lot of these people, and it's a good way to see if you want to get in there. Because let's face it, tight budget, uh, very constrained as far as what they can do on set or on location wherever they may be shooting, or just getting literally down and dirty because some of these scenes can be gory and a little bit fake blood, prosthetics, latex, whatever the case is. You're like, you better be willing to do those kind of things as far as effects, because if you can make it through that, then when you go to do a regular movie, whether it be like a drama, a comedy, whatever the case is, then maybe it's a little bit more at ease. But it's cool to see some of these people start off in some of these roles that, again, you wouldn't think of it. And one that pops in my head right now, Patrick Stewart, Life Force.
Oh, yes.
Like, if you tell me that Patrick Stewart was in a like weird sci-fi horror movie, I'm like, when? What the fuck? It happened. And again, movies back then were just a little bit different than the way they're filmed nowadays. But some of these films are just like you said, coming up with a concept, getting a bunch of people together and just filming. And they came up with some gems. And let's face it, there was a lot of not so great movies, but they're out there. They're part of the film history. So if anybody wants to go through and try to catch up or brush up on some material, it's all there, and it's fun to see where some of these people get their start and then build up from there. So yeah, like I was saying before, I didn't realize, as we were talking about before about Sinister, Scott Derrickson also looks like he directed Sinister as well. So I'm already familiar with some of his work. Now I'm sure I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into Sinister and some of his other movies as well. He also did he directed a segment for VHS 85.
Okay.
That's something that's coming out this year, I believe, if it's not out already. Huh.
Yeah, they're about, I think they're like 5 or 6 deep into the VHS series. I watched the first one, but I haven't seen any of the other ones.
That's just like an anthology set, right?
Yeah, each one's an anthology set, but they tend to usually have like an overarching theme to them. Like the 85 one, I think they did one that was supposed to be set in like the mid 1990s, and there was a couple other ones like that. But the first one was decent, and for some reason I just never revisited the other ones when they came out. But hey, I can't be everywhere all at once, as much to my chagrin.
All right. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to check out some scary movies before the month's out and see what I can find. What used to terrify me as a kid. Like I eventually watched most of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And you and I covered New Nightmare is probably my favorite out of all of them, but that's because it's more of a meta movie than anything else. When it evolved to that part, that just seemed a lot more interesting to me as opposed to like being terrified of Freddy as a scary movie character. Much like, in a different vein, Jason X. I think I could watch that one a little bit easier because it's not the Jason that we knew from Crystal Lake. It's a sci-fi souped up Uber Jason in a weird simulator on a spaceship. Which,
and yeah, what a wacky film. Go ahead.
That's just it. The wackier it got, the more I just was intrigued by it. Like the one scene where he takes the girl's head and throws it into the vat of nitrogen, and it takes her head out and then smashes it on the table. I'm like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. What a kill! Yeah,
you've got the kills that you would kind of expect from the original franchise, but then when you turn into Uber Jason, it's no longer. It's become a completely different film altogether. So,
and I still can't get over the fact that according to rumor and innuendo, Todd Farmer, the guy who wrote that, who's also plays one of like the space marines there protecting the kids who are there on the research mission.
Hmm.
He wrote it and allegedly had never seen another Friday the 13th movie.
Really?
That was what I remember reading somewhere. How true or not it is, I never got around to vetting that piece of information, but if that is the case, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know how you get. Well, I wouldn't say like close, but I mean, that one's interesting. I have to look that up now. That's for another night, though.
But you want to know what? Oh, the guy he gets a free pass from me because he also gave us Drive Angry shot in 3D starring Nicolas Cage.
There's a classic for you right there.
Fuck yeah, it is a classic.
I still remember that watching that with you guys in the house in Somerville, and just going, "What the fuck are we watching?"
I just rewatched that earlier in the year on HBO Max, and yeah, it's still amazing.
Is it still up there?
On HBO Max?
Yeah.
I don't know. A friend of mine let me use her password, but somewhere along the way, um, yeah, I'm not sure if she canceled her account or what, but I can't get an HBO Max anymore, and I'm not paying those jerk offs $15 a month.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. I was
No.
watching, because I mentioned before, I was watching Sinister on HBO Max, and then because streaming rights come and go, it left HBO Max, but then it moved over to Amazon Prime. So I have to go back to Amazon Prime now and finish it up from there, and then hopefully I can catch any other movies that might be tied to it and see if I can check that off my list of movies that I wanted to watch. But all right, so here's a question for you, because we've talked about horror movies quite a bit, not just on this episode, but other ones in the past. From Dusk Till Dawn, Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
How would you classify that movie?
You're asking hard questions here, there, guy. The first half of the movie is your standard heist / cops and robbers / hide and go seek affair.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half of the movie turns into a horror film.
I just wasn't sure how you would when you're gonna go put it on a shelf in a Blockbuster or in a Hollywood video, do you put it in the action genre or do you put it into the horror genre, being that it closes out with the vampires and everything else?
Okay, and that's and that was a question that was always, and this was a point of, I don't want to say contention, but I always ask this because 150 years ago when I worked at a video store, I was, a bunch of the ones I worked at, I was friends with the managers. So we'd always go through stuff and be like looking around at nonsense. And I'd always ask him, I was like, okay, for like a movie that kind of defines genre, like which one do you put it in? Because you can make an argument for 3 different sections. And everybody had different criteria for how they put stuff up. And a lot of times they even said like, when you would order from the distributor, you would kind of, a lot of them would just say, it's like, I just go by like whatever the distributor had the thing listed as, whatever was first in the listing, that's what the section I would put it under. Which really doesn't answer the question. But I mean, like, it's like one of those things. I mean, like, it's the same thing with From Dusk Till Dawn. You can make an argument for action. You can make an argument for horror. The same thing for, I'm trying to think of another good example for this. Big Trouble in Little China.
Ooh,
is that an action movie? Is that a fantasy movie? It has horror elements. It's a kung fu movie. I mean, once again, like, it's a little of everything.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that one. That's right. I see that one. I was, and this is because where I watched it initially, they used to run kung fu movies on Sunday in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And on TV, and I remember Big Trouble Little China came up, and whether you want to say they're being stereotypical because it's called Big Trouble Little China, or because there is kung fu fighting or martial arts fighting in the film itself, it was always classified under that as a kung fu film. But you're right; it's got that one in of itself has a lot of different elements to it. That one's kind of hard to pin down. Huh? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to kind of noodle through this shit, but I don't know. For a lot of these, I'd just be like, just put it in the fucking action section. Who cares? If somebody can't find it, just let them come up and ask, and then yeah, you'd go into the computer and be like, oh, here it is in this section. But that is also a non-existent problem anymore since um, how many video stores are left in the United States? A handful at absolutely the best. So yeah, I couldn't even tell you. I know for a fact. I think we're down to one Blockbuster.
Yeah, there was
That's
a
one of those.
documentary on Netflix that covered that one, which was actually kind of a fun documentary to see how they go about it. But it was weird that they go to get some of their movies or some of their product. They would actually go to like a Target or a Walmart and just buy some, a small bulk of a title, and then bring them back to the shop and then just sticker it up so they can rent it out. Because I guess the ordering catalog isn't what it used to be back in the day.
And it makes perfect sense because a lot of DVDs are, we moved from the model of videotapes where they were so expensive that you're not going to pay 100 to 150 bucks for a videotape back in, the early 1990s or late 80s.
I didn't know they were
But
that
now they're moved.
expensive.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It was wild how expensive VHS was, and the reason was the studios artificially inflated it because they were scared that home video rental would kill the theater business.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now we look at that and be like, I mean, they were fucking idiots, but I mean, we didn't, they didn't know that back in the 1980s. So,
I remember going to Unita Appliance. It was a shop in Somerville, and I tried ordering The Crow when it first was going to come out on VHS from a video rental place, and they said they don't do sales; they just do straight up rentals.
okay,
Eventually, if it goes into the discount bin when they're done with it, then you could pick it up. But at that point, the tape's already been used and abused. And I
yeah,
remember I was going to buy The Crow from this one appliance store because they had the option of buying it. And the guy quoted me 120 some odd dollars. And I was like, how much for a VHS?
you,
He goes, that's how much they are if you want to get it from the distributor. I'm like, fuck that. I'll just wait for it to come out in the stores. And I'll buy it for like 20, 30 bucks. But yeah, I was amazed at how much the VHSs were back then. And like you said, they jacked them up because they didn't want everybody just buying the copies very easily. That was before the ability to copy VHS to VHS became pretty much available to everybody. And I can't tell you how many times my dad would copy movies that we loved. So he would just say, "Oh, we'll just rent it, make a copy, and that way you guys can watch it whenever you want."
oh, I mean, good Lord, I mean, I still remember 15 years ago, a friend of mine had two different Netflix accounts because, which both of them were set to like the maximum number of DVDs that were allowed on the service, which I can't remember how much it was because he would literally, the day they came in, he would take them, rip them onto a computer and then burn them onto a blank DVD and
Yeah,
then put it in the mail and send it back out to the point where he's like, tell me what you want. And he had like binder after binder full of movie and TV show. Yeah, not
that's
bad.
crazy.
Yeah, for a while there, he was like, "What do you want?" He was like, "Just bring me the blank DVDs, and I'll burn whatever copies of whatever you want for everything." And I was like, "Yeah, pretty fucking sweet."
Well, let me ask you
But
this.
that's dead too. Go ahead. What's up?
Well, no, you're talking about the Netflix as far as the rental of the physical DVDs. They actually phased that out altogether
Yeah,
recently. And they were saying that
I
they were
think
sending DVDs to some of their customers who were still subscribed to that tier. Did you receive anything?
for like by mail.
Yeah.
No, I canceled my DVD service back in 2019.
Okay.
Um, I was still using it up till then because, as you might recall, I stubbornly had a television from the early 2000s that I didn't want to get rid of because I was just like, the TV still works fine. I can't get rid of it in good conscience. And so, and also because on streaming, there was a lot of obscure horror I remember I was looking for because I wasn't really, I was like, I'm not going to go buy a new TV so I can get streaming services, and then who the hell knows what I'm going to end up with. So I fired up a Netflix account, and this was, I think I did this in like early 2018, like spring 2018. And I just basically started working my way through all like a ton of like old horror I'd never seen. But yeah, then eventually like a friend of mine, a friend of ours, she was getting rid of a television. So she asked me, "Is like, do you want it? I'll sell it to you for like $50." So I bought it from her, and then I was like, "Well, I guess I'm gonna go get a Roku and start. Let's get into the streaming world then."
Nice.
But yeah, I think it was like either last Friday or the Friday before that. I think that was the day they said they sent out the last of the red envelopes, and then from that point they even said, "Hey, anybody out there who has anything, just keep it. It's yours now. We don't want it back."
I mean, you can't lose on that one, and especially if you had a movie that you liked.
Hmm.
Just hope you treated it well. You just
Yeah.
have to get an empty DVD case if you can still find those, and find a good home for it. But yeah, I mean, I remember that being the same thing with a few of our friends. That same thing, they would rent them, rip them, burn them, and then they would just have a physical library. Like, what do you want to watch? And it was just like, it's funny to think of it nowadays, especially considering how much cheaper storage has gotten. That you don't have to necessarily burn them onto discs or physical media. You can just watch them either from a USB or just straight from your laptop or whatever the case is. Or hell, nowadays, even your phones, you could just load up a bunch of movies and just go from there. But yeah, that was the way of the world for a while. And you're just like, wow, this is come and gone so quickly.
Well, it's also interesting if you think about it too. 15 years ago, storage was still remarkably expensive, and in 15 years ago in 2008, storage was breathtakingly cheaper than it was in the late 1990s. I mean, in the late 1990s, so you got a computer, it would be like, holy shit, I have 50 megabytes of storage here.
Yeah.
Now, that is laughable. I mean, I think it's already been 5 years since I went out and I bought a 1 terabyte external hard drive for $100. So, I mean, as the technology improves and storage gets cheaper and cheaper, I mean, now you can probably just. I'm trying to think how. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. Like, I know for music, a 1 minute of music is roughly 1 megabyte. I just wish I could remember how much a movie was. Like, roughly how much, like, an hour of, like, of a show or a movie was in terms of storage. Because I'm trying to figure, because 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. Is that correct?
Say that again.
1 terabyte is equal to 1,000 gigabytes. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. So it goes to reason now. Yeah, if you have like a 2 or 3 terabyte hard drive, say you get the 3.1, that's 3,000 gigs. So I'm trying to even figure out, like, number one, you could fit literally thousands of albums on there, or probably hundreds of movies, I'm going to reckon.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the length of the movies.
Well, I mean, of course, you're at the mercy of, your 80-minute, whatever independent film is probably not going to take up as much space as, shit, something really long. Titanic's long.
Titanic, Avatar, Endgame, any of those.
Braveheart. There we go. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of all like the double tape sets from the video store.
There
era.
you go. Oh man, yeah, that was a thing too, wasn't it? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, man. I mean, good Lord, it's wild to think about this kind of stuff, but I mean, all this shit was like 25 to 30 years ago now.
You know what I miss, and this is telling of when I had my DVD player, because one of the first things I did when I got a DVD player, when the prices came down, they were very affordable. I bought it. A friend of mine bought me a new version of Terminator 2 that had just come out, because they had extra specials and behind the scenes, deleted scenes especially. And I bought Gladiator.
Okay.
The Russell Crowe movie, not the Cuba Gooding Jr. And hey, you got to say it, because sometimes people will mix those two up.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I've been looking for you. You're the one other person on the planet who remembers Gladiator starring Cuba Gooding Jr. and that white dude. Oh, man. Oh, wow.
There you go. Two things that I miss from having a DVD player and watching a physical movie. One, the looping home menu screen that had the play or scenes or chapters, whatever the case was, and then trailers. It would like loop for like what, like a minute or two, and then it would just start over again. Um,
Y- That was kind of that was the sign of quality right there, because you knew if it was if it was a DVD that was made somewhat on the cheap side in terms of actually producing the DVD itself, you would get the static image that you can just kind of like play movie, select language, select scene, special features.
yeah.
But the fancy ones actually had like the animation that would loop, or like the little like what have you.
And then the other thing was partway through the movie, as you're watching it, especially when you had like I think it was like the dual layer DVD discs had this, especially early on. As you're watching the movie partway through, there was gonna be this one spot where the movie like skips, kinda.
Hmm.
The movie would just like pause, and essentially what it was the player was quickly loading up the rest of the film. It loaded like the first portion of it, and then it was after that little weird pause, it would load up the rest of the movie. But you wouldn't know because you're like, wait, did the movie just skip? No, it's okay, and then you just completely forget about it.
Yeah, I've noticed that a few times, and that's I don't even think that really happens anymore with the next generation of DVD players.
I don't think so, because now if you still have a DVD player, just about all of them can read the disc on the fly, no problem. It doesn't have to worry about buffering or loading the next section of it into the memory.
Do you have a DVD player right now?
No, I actually don't.
Really? Okay, interesting.
um, I still have my old DVD player, but it's somewhere in the basement, and I have not touched that one in a long time. And that's the one that I bought from way back when. Um,
Okay.
the closest thing that I have to a DVD player now would be my Xbox. The 360 still played DVDs. The Xbox One still played DVDs. And the PlayStation. Well, technically PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 4 that I still have. Those are the only things that I have that still play DVDs, but I have not put a DVD in. In fact, I can't honestly remember the last time I bought a regular DVD. It's been a long time.
Oh wow. Okay.
So there was a point in time for a few years back where Christmas would roll around, and whatever the new movies were, when I was like, oh, if somebody wants a simple gift to get me for Christmas, just get me a movie. Here's a list of the movies that I really like the Dark Knight trilogy movies, some of the Fast and Furious movies, stuff along that line. So like probably like what 2015, 2017, around that time was like
Okay.
the last time I was getting movies as gifts, but I stopped buying them for a while because I had stuff on VHS, and then after a while I started rebuying the stuff I had on VHS on DVD because that was the switchover. If you wanted to hold on to it, and they were saying the celluloid as far as VHSs will eventually wear out and just rot, whatever the case is. It's just the life cycle of a VHS tape. But then when somebody told me that the same thing can happen for a DVD, just whatever happens to a DVD, I was like, that happens to a DVD disc as well. Like it's a physical media. It's not film like the other ones. Like it's still a manufactured item, physical media, and that eventually will wear down or scratches, whatever the case is. That also will eventually fail on you. It's got a longer lifespan, but just you're not going to have it forever, essentially.
I've been doing, here's a weird thing. Like I've got some very old DVDs, and I'm kind of playing that game periodically with them where it's like, okay, let's see if these ones still play. Like I'm sitting in my living room and I'm looking at my copy of Fight Club, and I remember buying that probably about 2002.
Nice.
So, and that one still worked. Well, I haven't watched that. Honestly, God, I probably haven't watched Fight Club in years at this point. There's a couple of them that are just kind of sitting there hanging out. But, well, okay, I'll go one even better. The Friday the 13th box set, the first box set, I bought in October of 2004 when that came out. I was watching that as recently as a few weeks ago, and no problem whatsoever on them.
I'm,
So I'm very curious what the lifespan actually is on these.
I'm sure this is more like if you factor in like if it was made for a rental disc,
Okay.
the constant replaying of it, the constant handling of it, scratching it up, or if like a lot of people, what they do is if they don't have it in their you said you have your stuff in your living room, people who put them in storage, if they're not kept in a well conditioned climate room, So if you put them in a storage unit with no temperature control, the extreme heats and the extreme cold, that's going to make the disc itself expand and compact. Expand and contract over time. That it will add to the wear and tear of the disc itself. It's nothing that you have to worry about like overnight happening or just like within a few years. You'll have them for a while. Like I said, VHSs were more prone to breaking because you can get it stuck in the player. The tape would break if one of the mechanisms got stuck, whatever the case is. There were more moving parts to the media itself. Remember that little like
Yeah.
flap on the back end that would reveal the tape?
Oh yeah, of course.
So stuff like that, and especially the geared wheels that would play just like a cassette player, whereas a DVD just spins. Your DVD player will probably fail before the DVD itself because of the internal mechanisms and the moving parts. Either the laser is going to fail, or the motor is going to fail that loads the disc and slides it back and forth, or the little spindle that comes up to the center of the disc, stuff like that. That'll all break before your disc will. But
Oh yeah, I'm on my third DVD player.
yeah, see, it's just weird to see where we are now. And for me, especially because now a lot of movies that we buy, if we don't just watch them on Netflix when they first get released, there's a few movies here and there. Like I watched, I wanted to go watch the Machine, starring Bert Kreischer, his comedy film, based off his one comedy bit of getting involved with the Russian mafia. Didn't get a chance to see it in the theater. I think it was like last week or the week before. It finally hit Netflix. Jen had to go out with the kids for a little bit. I'm like, great, you go do what you got to do. I'm gonna watch the fucking Machine. And it was just as dumb and ridiculous as I thought. A little bit more gory than I was expecting, but it was a welcome surprise. So I'm like, hey, fuck, this is just a dumb comedy that you would expect to be released like late '90s, early 2000s, but they just went out and went full tilt. Aside from that, on streaming, I think I bought a few movies for the kids here and there, so we have them on the go. So if it's on my phone or Jen's tablet, whatever the case is, we can watch them if we're in a tight spot and the kids need something to watch. They got that. And then I think I bought the Dungeons and Dragons movie came out because I knew Jen was going to be really into it. And I read the reviews saying it was really, really good. And it's probably the best one to date so far, considering the history of D&D movies that have not been so great in the past.
Oh yeah.
We watched it, and it's actually a lot of fun. Sad to know that it probably won't get a sequel, because according to the studios, it didn't hit its numbers that it needed to hit to greenlight. But
Nah.
I implore anybody who gets a chance to watch it. It's a fun little I want to say bank heist, but it's a heist movie essentially. At one point, they have to get in and try to steal a magical item, and then the story progresses from there. But I would recommend it to anybody. If you're not, even if you're not a D&D fan, it's just a fun little action movie.
Oh, right on.
So,
okay.
I got one more for you, as far as like in the vein of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Okay.
Scream.
Oh, like what category?
Yes.
Oh, that's easy. Horror.
You would still put that one in horror?
Where would you put it?
Not that I think there's a section for it, but I mean, it's more of a satire than horror, right?
Well, okay. You can make the argument that it's got it does satirize horror movie, especially slasher tropes. And you can also make the argument that it's also a quote unquote meta movie, which I once heard somebody say for the world of Wes Craven, whatchamacallit, Wes Craven's new nightmare crawled so Scream could walk. Because it was like, I think 2.5 years between each of those movies.
Okay.
But at its core, I mean, the meat and potatoes of that movie, it's still a horror film.
Okay. I can go with that one.
I mean, that's the way I look at it. And that one, I think that one's a little bit more cut and dry than your Dusk Till Dawns and your Big Trouble in Little China, or oh bloody hell, I'm trying to think of other good examples of this entire thing. I don't know. Fuck, I don't know.
No,
sorry, I'm a little fried.
I get what you're saying though, because if I remember walking through the aisles of any video rental place, there was not a section for satire. Flat out. Don't recall ever seeing anything like that. It was always, a drama or an action or a comedy, whatever the case was. Didn't matter if it was a parody, it would end up in comedy along those lines, whatever the case was. But yeah, Scream would definitely, because it still has all those horror elements throughout. Even the later ones stepped up the kills and the gore. I'll say it again. The one that was recently part 7 or part 8, I can't remember. The recent one in New
Bloody
York.
hell, I'm trying to remember here. We just had part 6.
Okay, so okay, that makes sense. Yes, because they were like capping off the trilogies. Um, I'm hoping they follow through with their plans to make another one, because the last one that I saw, where they were bringing back characters from the different movies and still playing with the lore and the history and mentioning characters who have either died on screen or never came back to the films themselves. The story for that one that I heard recently was that they're saying the most recent movie, they weren't able to get Neve Campbell to come back after the previous film because she was asking for too much money. She believes that at this point, she kind of earns the higher paycheck, which I tend to agree. She's been there from the beginning. Give her the money. And I can't remember who it was. There was a news article where they were asking, what do you think of Neve Campbell's dispute with the studios and the new people that are helming the Scream movies? And they essentially just said, just pay her the fucking money. Like, so long as you write the good story and she's in it, you're gonna get your money back. That there's no question about that. Just give her her credit, give her her due, let her come back, and if it is the last film, or if you want to keep going after that, you can easily bring her character back and give her a big send off. They've done that with some of the other characters. I don't want to spoil any characters that people might know, but they kept referring to them as legacy characters. And as with anything, they say, legacy characters in horror movies, they're always safe. Not so in the Scream franchise. So.
All right. Well, okay, you did one last one. Let's see if, and I'm not even sure if you've ever heard of this one, but we'll still fucking give it a shot anyway.
Sure.
Are you familiar with Shadow of the Vampire?
Sounds familiar. Trying to remember. Is this the one with, give me 1 second here.
Sure.
John Malkovich?
Yes.
And it's the Nosferatu. They're filming of Nosferatu, but he's actually a vampire off camera kind of thing?
Yes.
And you're going to ask me, where do you put that one?
Okay, what is it?
Oh, God. Okay, so going by what you said earlier with Scream, it still has the horror overtones. I mean, this one still is a vampire movie, even though it's like the early vampire movies, silent films. So I guess silent horror is that a genre? Is that a section in the aisles?
I don't know if I'd ever get that granular, but I mean, silent horror is a subgenre of it, just because it was the silent movie era with your Nosferatu. Okay, Doug, let's see if we can do this. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I think the Golem was a silent film. There's a couple other ones I'm not thinking of. There's some very old ones. According to legend, I think there's only a few stills of it floating around out there. I think all copies have been lost. But Thomas Edison allegedly made an adaptation of Frankenstein, but I don't think that was so long ago, I don't think it really even exists anywhere. And I'm really pushing, I might even be misremembering the fuck out of this. But, I mean, silent horror is technically a genre of stuff just because it was from that, it was basically stuff that came out, up to the 1920s, because I think they introduced sound in the 30s.
Was Phantom of the Opera a silent film at one point?
I don't know. I've actually never seen any version of the Phantom of the Opera. I'm familiar with Lon Chaney's version, the famous one. But
yeah.
I've never actually watched any of them start to finish, truth be told. I've just seen bits and pieces of them over the years.
I have this vague memory of black and white footage of Phantom of the Opera, and it being you would hear the musical notes, like the actual music from the movie itself, but there was no spoken dialogue.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember where the fuck I saw that. Oh, and a little fun trivia. Paul Stanley of Kiss ended up doing a production of Phantom of the Opera in Canada at one point.
Really?
He was the Phantom.
That's kind of neat, actually, and that's actually kind of cool.
It was at one point where one of the flea markets we used to go to, had bootleg copies of it, so you could check it
Oh
out.
wow.
And nowadays, if you just plug it into YouTube, I'm sure you can find somebody uploaded a video of it somewhere. But it was one of those things where he's like, "Oh, I just want to do something outside of the band. I want to be artistic and creative." He ended up taking up painting and a bunch of other hobbies when he wasn't touring, and one of them was when he had some downtime, he decided, "Fuck, I'll be the Phantom." And some theater group said, "Come on down and have some fun." And I don't remember how long he did it for. Was it for more than a few months? He had a nice little run going for a while, and I always like, "Oh, I want to see that one." And I saw bits and pieces of it because the copy that I had was just horribly staticky.
Oh. Oh, and you are correct. There's the 1925 adaptation of Phantom of the Opera. That is a silent film starring Lon Chaney. So
Aha!
yeah, very, very, very good, man. Very good.
That's just late nights staying up and being terrified. I can't tell you how many movies late night I would catch. Okay, so here's another thing that would happen. If it wasn't on like an HBO or some like movie channel that we had growing up or we were subscribed to, I would catch things here and there, watch things I shouldn't be watching. Even the stuff that was edited for, network television would still kind of freak me out a little bit. And then
Okay.
every now and then when I would watch old VHS tapes, because they were copies of the ones from the rental stores, still had the coming attractions for other movies ahead of them. So
Okay.
there was one movie called Bloodlust. It was a female character that late night, she was pretty much like a vampiric, and she would just go out and attack people. So it was the kind of things like she would like pretty much center on male victims. What was another one? The Serpent and the Rainbow with Bill Pullman.
Oh, with Bill Pullman. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that one. That trailer fucking terrified me. I know it's not as like gore driven as like some of the old horror movies. It's more like a thriller, a psychological, especially like the idea of him being buried alive and becoming a quote unquote zombie or being put through the ritual, stuff like that. But
Also, a quick interesting side note. I rewatched Serpent and the Rainbow, I think about a year and a half ago, and I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. It went right over my head, but a lot of that actually focuses on the Haitian dictatorship of the Duvalier family, who were absolute just ruthless dictators who brutalized that fucking island. As if they didn't have
okay.
enough fucking problems in Haiti.
Oh boy. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. I believe the movie Bloodlust sticks out in my head because I want to say that trailer had a Belle Biv DeVoe song, Poison. Or I might be conflating that with another trailer.
I think you might be mixing it up with something because the only Bloodlust I can find is a 1992 Australian vampire film. And this doesn't look like the kind of thing that would have a Belle Biv DeVoe song in it.
Okay, then I might be complaining. Oh, okay. I think that one was actually called Poison, the other film I'm thinking of. Because, back in the late 80s, early 90s, if you're going to find a song for the soundtrack, it's going to be the title of the movie as well. And where's some of the other ones? I remember I used to watch, there was the trailer for The Munchies, which wasn't a horror film. It was just like a weird, like, Gremlins-like film.
Yeah, I think that was just like Gremlins was popular. We'll just make small, weird creatures. I kind of remember Munchies.
Yeah, because if you would electrify them, they would turn into little statues
Hmm.
from whatever, like, little temple they came from. I'm trying to remember the other one. Shit.
Yeah, and they came from Machu Picchu. Yes.
Yes. Oh, and another one that easily it's having a resurgence right now. Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
If you go to Spirit Halloweens that are currently open, not a plug. My son loves the store, so we go there on a regular basis. They are starting to make like keychains, big tall animatronics. My son has never seen the movie, but he's very familiar with all the characters and all the different things, especially like the cotton candy cocoons. That was another one that at first terrified me, but when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is just like silly fun. And I guess the clowns soften it for me. It might terrify more people because of it. I don't know, but It was the subject
I
material.
That was another one where it was so campy. I know it was supposed to be a horror movie, but they loaded up so much like weird comedy and other just silly shit into it
Yeah,
that I was like, I can't. Even as a kid, I was like, I can't be scared of this, but I'm enjoying watching it. So yeah, I mean, it's good stuff. I will definitely say that.
that and it had a killer theme song.
Oh yeah, the Dickies.
that
Yeah, they crush it.
that fucking rock and roll version of the Big Top. It just it's so good.
Yeah, they've and also the merchandising for that has exploded as of late.
Yeah, I mean, it was a few years back that Spirit Halloween was really like starting to put stuff out. Like welcome mats or hanging decorations. The fact that you have there's at least two animatronics, I believe, that were sold there in the past few years. I mean, now animatronics are all over the place. I mean, hell, they have a leather face when you walk in.
Ah, yes, nice.
So you walk in and you step on the little foot pad, and all of a sudden you hear the chainsaw and he starts swaying back and forth. I'm like, oh Jesus, man! I'm so glad I'm not a kid nowadays because all this shit would have scared the fuck out of me.
Well, here's another one I don't know if you've heard about. They're currently working on a video game for Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yes, I did hear about that one as well. Uh,
Okay, right on.
Another good thing, the horror genre just getting more and more games made of it. Friday the 13th we talked about. There's the Chainsaw Massacre one currently out there.
Hmm.
Dead by Daylight, which they just bring in other characters into the game. You can be the killer. But yeah, for all those games now having their chance to shine, and if you have the right mechanics, hey, why not? Evade killer clowns, have fun. Don't
And
become a cotton candy.
it's one of those things too where this is also, and I remember being a kid, like video games based on movies, especially horror movies when we were kids, were such garbage that it is kind of satisfying now where and I know there are plenty of complaints you can have. Like, I haven't played Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's funny because I've kind of dug around and seen some of the commenting people have been doing on YouTube videos of it and other stuff. And I'm seeing the same complaints I was seeing back when Friday the 13th was the rage about 6 years ago. But most of it really boils down to the fact that, if you have people who actually want to play the game and play it right and not try to be dicks, I mean, that makes night and day difference. I mean, you're always going to have some technical issues to work through, but at the end of the day, I think of it this way because Ilphonic and Gun Media are both once again involved in both of those projects, Killer Clowns and Texas Chainsaw. And I'd like to think I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on this one. They basically sat down when they started working on these games and said, "Okay, what are all of our lessons learned from Friday the 13th? Like, what worked, and more importantly, what didn't fucking work?"
Yeah.
But maybe I'm giving them too much credit. I don't know. It remains to be seen. I'm probably going to, well, probably when we see the first price drop for Texas Chainsaw, once we get probably into deeper into like November, December, I'm probably going to snag a copy of it because I don't think I want to drop $40 on it right now.
Fair.
But yeah, we shall see what's going to happen. And I keep meaning to buy um, fucking shit. Dead.
Dead by Daylight.
God, how Dead by Daylight. I keep trying to call it Dead by Dawn, but that's Evil Dead 2. So,
There's
but
another game that came out. I want to say it was last year, and we'll wrap up on this one. I'm trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head. The Quarry.
oh yeah, I've been looking into buying that. I've been looking at that. I've heard good things about that.
Yeah, because when it came out around last year, G4 was still around, and they were doing a lot of coverage on it, and it just seemed like a crazy, like well mapped out, survival horror game, and everybody was talking about it. It was getting played a lot online. There was a lot of playthrough footage online. I never got around to it, but like, yeah, if you want that type of game, if you want those characters and those, no matter what decision you make, somebody's gonna die. Like, there's no saving everybody. It's just one of those weird games that came and then kind of like, I would like to say disappeared, but for the fans who enjoyed it, obviously they played it the hell of it. They probably still do, but otherwise, in the world of video games, once something has a big release, 3-4 months down the line, it kind of like dwindles out of the spotlight, and people don't really talk about it unless it has some kind of like DLC or resurgence or something like that.
Well, it's interesting. I've often tried to figure out like what is it about Dead by Daylight, other than the fact that they keep bringing in all these different properties to use, including and up to the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. I think they had Michael. I think they did an iteration with Michael Myers. There's a couple other ones like that. I mean, that does make a lot of sense, but yeah, it's and the gameplay is pretty good, so I'll definitely give it that. So, but
From what
yeah,
I
they seem to be hitting that.
from what I heard, Dead by Daylight essentially just had a larger studio working on it and less bugs than Friday the 13th.
That makes sense.
That's pretty much everything else. I mean, Friday the 13th had the license for the game and the characters, or I should say the archetypes, because the jocks, the nerd, the bad girl, whatever the case was. But Dead by Daylight just said, all right, we can do licensing too, and they just bought every other killer they could get under the sun and just said, we'll just put them in the game.
Yeah, not a bad strategy.
Not at all, especially if you're going to compete with one of the titans of horror. So
Well, let's be honest here. The big thing for Gun Media and the Friday the 13th thing, you know, they were just going to make a smaller game kind of influenced by Friday, and then Sean Cunningham said, use the property. And then I'd like to think that they were like, we can't let this opportunity go. But that was probably too much. That was probably too much for their shop and their studio.
it was a fun concept from the beginning, and then the fact that they did get the license, that was awesome, and that's what really put the Kickstarter over the top. What was it, like you said, 6 years ago? And I remember,
Well, the Kickstarter. Oh, Jesus. The Kickstarter started in 2015, I think it was.
and I was so ready for it. Like, for a guy who did not like the movies growing up, but like learned to embrace them later in life, I was like, yeah, this would be fun. This would be great. And the game came and went, and all the legal troubles, and that was such a sad affair.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the victim of circumstances. Also some, yeah, and just some rough planning, but c'est la vie.
Yep. All right. So, first episode of October. I think we've delved quite deep into the horror genre. What do you think?
I think we've covered plenty of ground for the evening.
Well, sir, good luck to you in your remaining, was it? I can do math right now. 27,
26?
26,
26.
27. Oh, that's right. Tonight's the one you're going to watch. That's right.
Yeah.
26 more days. Well, good on you. Have fun. Would you mind if I ask you to check in on the movies as each week goes by?
Hell no, I'm all for it. Yeah, let's do it.
Fuck yeah. All right, there we go. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Erik Hernandez.
And I'm Doug.
We are the Rabblecast.